What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Sales Leverage Pip to President Club podcast. My name is Ryan Johns, founder and CEO of Sales Leverage. We started this podcast with the intent of re educating the market on the most optimal ways to achieve sales and revenue success. Our guests consist of revenue leaders, individual contributors across sales, marketing, business development, customer success, and even product engineering. All of these teams play a critical role in the overall success of the modern revenue org. We address the most pressing challenges and offer actionable solutions that simplify the complex sales process. So today, I have a very special guest. I've got Ross Trampler. Ross is the Director of Strategic Development for Testlio. Testlio provides software testing services and technology for companies like Microsoft, the NBA, right? The National Basketball Association, Netflix, SAP, Paramount, PayPal, and Uber, just to name a few small companies they work with. So pretty impressive there. With over 12 years of experience in sales, operations, project and program management, he has a proven track record of driving results across various industries and markets. In addition to working at Testlio, Ross continues to serve as an innovation officer in the United States Army Reserve, helping to ensure the readiness and effectiveness of the future Army force. Ross also serves on the board of one of my nonprofits focused on active duty military enablement. So, Ross, of course, thank you for your service, my man, and welcome to the show.
Too, Ryan. I'm really excited to be on here. I feel like we've been talking about this for 5 or 6 years now since we first met. So I'm glad we can make
Yeah.
it happen.
Yes. Funny. Speaking of how we met, man, like what is it? It's yeah, but 5 or 6 years ago, man, I was the head of global alliance strategy for a consulting firm. And I wanted to hire you, right? I don't remember what the role was. I don't know if it was like a partner director or what it was, but I just know we couldn't afford you that time. But definitely remember your skill set and you made a massive impression on me. So we just maintained a friendship over this year. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's, one of those things that I think I made a junior mistake when I look back in deciding a career or not a career, but deciding on where to go based off of a base salary. So,
Yeah.
I do, sometimes think about that, and I wish we would have, had a chance to work together.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. But hey, I think things happen when they're supposed to happen. So I don't think there are any mistakes or anything like that. Timing matters, but I think the connection we made was supposed to happen. And hey, here we are now. And there's many things I think we're going to do together going forward. I just think we're philosophically aligned on how we view business, how we view operations, people strategy on so many levels, man. So I really
Yeah.
value connections like this. So I think it's going to be long term for sure. So listen, man, tell me a little bit more, or the audience really more about your role at Testlio. Like, what's going on with you guys? Like, what are you doing the day to day? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so, I think, right now, director of strategic development, I tend to work with some of our more strategic clients at Testlio. But I've been at Testlio for about 3 years now. Went from account director role to actually leading a team and being an IC for a practice that we started that was geared towards business software clients specifically. So this is kind of the latest role that I'm in, but I would say as a seller, we are all very much kind of full cycle sellers.
Yeah.
We don't really have SDRs in our org, so we're responsible for top of the funnel to
Oh
getting
wow,
deals done.
wow,
Yeah,
doing the heavy lifting. So yeah, full cycle is man. That's where I came from. That's definitely where I came from. Like when I got introduced to SDRs, I'm like, what's an SDR? Like I like what is this? Like oh, you're gonna go source leads for me? Like okay, and even when
yeah,
I got those leads, it's like it was a gift. You know what I mean? It wasn't like something I expected.
yeah. I think I've benefited or we've benefited at Tesla of having a very, very good marketing engine. So, when I first came in, I was very pleased to see, I think, the amount of inbound leads, inbound interest that was coming in. That was something I wasn't used to. So it definitely made my job, I think my peers' job easier. But again, full cycle, we got to own some of our own pipeline development.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that takes a lot of discipline, a lot of attention to detail, focus, structure. Like being, this is where I'm really intrigued about your role in the military, right? An innovation officer, and like
Yeah.
how that translates into your work, because you've experienced some significant success, man. Just the way you work quality and how you deliver, the efficiency. Like, talk to us about that, man. How do those skills and behaviors translate?
Yeah, I mean, I always say that I don't think I'm a super naturally gifted seller, but I think a lot of the skills that I learned in the military helped me expedite kind of my success early on, to kind of supplement things that I didn't know.
Mm,
What it really boiled down to for me is first and foremost this notion of very meticulous kind of planning and preparation. I think I was an artillery officer, so I think just artillery specifically in the Army requires a lot of attention to detail, planning and preparation. I mean, decimals matter. You're off a decimal or two,
oh, wow.
potentially people's lives are on the line. So I think that kind of mentality was really beaten into my head over the years, and I continued that into sales from how I develop an account strategy. I have a template that I built that if you looked at it, you would go, okay, an Army guy built this. It's very much like very similar to how I prepare for meetings. When
Mhm.
I go into a meeting, I mean, I basically write, and I'm not sure how the Air Force did it, but at least in the Army, we have an operations order process. So, as a leader, you write an operations order, and it's situation, mission, the 5 Ws, task, task and purpose, objectives, who's doing what, timelines. And I typically still plan in that way for meetings. And I think it's really, it's helpful for clients because I think when they see that attention to detail, it tends to give them confidence, not only in me, but the organization that they're potentially buying from. But I think internally in enterprise sales, it's a team sport. So you have to be able to put together a plan and communicate that plan effectively to the other people, pre-sales, whatever it may be, that are working that opportunity with you.
That's huge, man. I think that is in my consulting work, I see that consistently being a gap across all teams.
Yeah.
That meticulous attention to detail, detail, detail. I'm just a fan of being overly prepared, man. I'd rather have more information than not enough.
Yeah.
And it just helps, especially when you're working with adjacent teams. I mean, your company, you're working with some massive, massive organizations. So I would imagine it's not just you, it's a team effort, right? And so oftentimes what I'll see is that data exchange between teams is a major
Yeah.
breakdown, and it does negatively impact the customer. So I think that is a big, big takeaway for our audience. For those of you that are listening, be overly prepared. You know what I'm saying? Not saying you got to share it all,
Yeah.
not saying you got to go into all that detail, but you need to have it at the ready.
Yeah, and I think probably some of my colleagues would laugh and say that I go a little overboard with the planning and the preparation, but I think the majority of them would say it's helpful, right? And if you look at how we sell, I mean, we're selling services. We're selling human beings that are
Mhm.
delivering services. So I think that is the product. We don't necessarily have, a pre-sales team. I mean, when I bring folks in from the technical side, I mean, they are the team that's going to serve our clients. So I very much see my role as how do I equip them and set them up for success in a meeting with a client. And that requires attention to detail during my discovery process. That requires me kind of clearly communicating to them, this is the purpose of the meeting, our objectives. What are we going to do? What do I need you to do? Something that I think is big for me that I've tried to articulate to people is this notion of kind of course of action planning.
Mhm.
Because, when you going back to the Army, and the Army has the military decision making process. It's called MDMP. Basically, a process for how to plan, how to gather information to thoroughly understand a situation before you deliver your plan.
Mhm.
But I think as a part of that process, you do what's called course of action analysis. So, what is the best thing that could happen? What's the most likely thing? And what's the most dangerous thing? And that's something that I tend to adopt when I go into a meeting is, we all tend to get happy ears as salespeople sometimes.
Mhm.
It's like, what is the worst thing that this person could potentially say to me? And am I prepared for that? I don't want to be caught on my heels. I want to be prepared for as many potential situations as possible. And, I've personally started to really lean into Chet. GPT to help me prepare for that thing. I have my approach,
Mhm.
but I think you can use these tools to help better prepare you for all the potential situation that you could be faced with.
1000%, bro. I was talking about this concept on the last podcast with my guy Tim. It sounds like what you're doing is you're taking a risk-based approach to deal planning, sales. We do that in forecasting. And what I was telling him as an idea, I'm like, man, why don't we start rewarding people that take that mentality, right? Or that risk-based approach? Like what not be overly optimistic, like, oh, this deal's gonna go through, it's gonna work. And we make a lot of these assumptions versus
Yeah.
taking the approach you're talking about because to me, I think you're a better steward of the business if you take that type of approach. And I think people that do that
Yeah.
need to be rewarded for not only winning the deal, but also mitigating the risk towards the business itself,
Yeah.
right? And driving deal velocity and maximizing revenue. Those are some creative ways that we can incentivize that type of qualitative focused behaviors. And I think the company culture can skyrocket from there. I think sky's the limit.
Yep. No, I agree. I'll give credit to my boss. He always says this thing and it really sticks with me. It's like being a good seller is not about winning every deal. It's about picking the deals you can win and winning those deals. And I think for me, when I look at the evolution of my career, I think I came in with that mentality at first of like, well, I'm going to win every deal. Like I'm going to be the best. And I
Yeah.
think that, you mature and you start to understand like there's just circumstances outside of your control that
Yeah.
you can't affect. But what you can do is be better at asking questions, understanding a situation, and like not, hearing the unsaid, I guess, and knowing like this is a deal I can win or a deal I can't win. Because like we all know, I mean, forecasting a deal is really critical, not just for yourself, but for the organization that you're part of.
Mhm. Mhm. Where do you attribute that confidence? So when you said early on you had a high level of confidence, you're gonna win every deal. Was that more from the military training, or was that from just your competitive athletic background? Because I think you told me you were a college athlete too, right? For those of you that can't see,
Yeah.
Ross and I are sitting down. Ross is like 7 feet tall. How tall are you again? Like Ross is huge. And you play ball, right, in college.
Yeah, I used to be 6'10". I think I'm probably about 6'9" now from all the
As we get
sitting
older, yeah.
in my chair, watching Zoom meetings or being on Zoom meetings. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I played basketball at West Point in college, and yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination. I definitely am competitive. I think as a athlete my whole life, that's just kind of like built in. Another reason why I was probably good to get into sales, but I also think the military and I don't want to say confidence is the right word, but it's another thing that you learn from the military is this notion of kind of grit. Like, I'm just going to figure it out no matter what. And I think that was my mentality when I came in. Like, if I just work super hard and every second I have, I'm learning and getting better, like I can close every deal. But then again, like I said, you go through your career and you realize, no, that's not possible. I could do every single thing right and it could just not work out. And that's where that skill of like being able to assess a deal, like, can I actually win this deal? It's not about how good my pitch is or how good my presentation is. It's about understanding the intel. Like,
Yes.
going back to the army thing of human intelligence and like all the conversations that I have and capturing all that information, understanding that information, hearing what's actually going on and being able to say, like, I can close this deal. There's a compelling event, there's budget, all these factors and things that are going on. I think that's just that's an important skill.
Yeah. Man, you are giving the keys to the kingdom right now. I hear so much, and maybe you do too, on social media about the pitch, the presentation, the demo. And it's like, that's not where the
Yeah.
deal is won or lost. That's not it. I see these folks talking about, oh, pitch me on live or sell me on live. Like that's it's not a real scenario. And it just, I don't know. To me, it's more ego driven, but that's not where deals happen,
Yeah.
right? It's what you're talking about. It's comprehending what the customer is trying to achieve and aligning and mapping your value to that. And hopefully in a quantitative way, because I always tell people that math is the universal language of business, right? If you can
Yeah.
quantify something, it tends to resonate a lot better. And especially in like your space where you're enterprise sales, man, you can have the best presentation demo ever. It's still not gonna
Yeah.
make that big of a deal.
Yeah, and that's just where I think that the discovery is so critical.
Whoa, say
You know,
that again,
the
Ross. Wait a minute. Back up.
the
What is so critical? Say that again. I gotta hear it again.
the the discovery, and when I say that, I don't just mean what are their pains, because I think that's a surface level understanding. You have to understand the pains. How do the pains align with actual dollars and impact that they're experiencing, and how do your services align? But then even beyond that, going back to what I said earlier, like understanding the unsaid. Like, is there really a compelling event? Is there really executive visibility on this problem? Who are the competitors? Who have they worked with in the past? Who do they have relationships within your competitors? I think you have to be able to like bring all this intelligence together to assess, is this a good deal? And I think going to more of that presentation phase or that, you know, pitch phase kind of thing, I think you as a seller might not do that great of a job at that. But if you do a good job of discovery and gathering information and communicating that information to the team, to your team that's going to support you, they can supplement what you're doing. They can help you in that process. They can see if you're capturing and delivering the signals to your team, they might see things that you don't see. And that's why that's really important for you to have a good ability to ask questions, to understand and communicate that information internally, because again, it's a team sport. You might not be the best at pitching an idea or pitching a service, but if you have a good team around you and you set them up for success, they're going to fill in the gaps where like maybe you can't.
Absolutely, man. I think that is major nugget there. And also, like, just letting the data tell the story. You don't have to be the best speaker,
Yeah.
orator, the most charismatic. If you let the customer data tell the story, that's what's going to give you a lot of leverage, right? Because
Yeah.
it's their information, their data, their efficiency gaps, or whatever it may be. That's what's going to drive them to a point of change, right? Because every sale, that's what it is. You're asking a customer to change something, do something different, embrace a new process, embrace a new technology, whatever it is. You're selling change to them, and people don't change very easily. They don't
Yeah.
they don't embrace change very easily oftentimes.
Nope.
What do you see as some of the detractors in, it could be your business now, it could be in other roles you've been in, like, what have you seen stand in the way of sales effectiveness? Like, when we're talking about the detail, the precision, the quality, what are some of the detractors? What do you see?
Well, I mean, I think that, and I've said it, but I think to expand on it, this notion of good communication, you can be a good listener and gather all this information, but I don't, you can't consume it and then communicate next steps effectively. That's a big detractor to success. So I guess to make it from a practical perspective, right? We tend to over index, I think, on the customer communication part. And that's critical, right? Because I think the better you can communicate, the more clear, concisely, deliberate that you can communicate, that gives, you know, that client, that prospect confidence that you're going to be able to deliver, that your organization is going to be able to deliver. But I think again, going back to preparing your team internally, that's where good communication is really critical. And I've been thinking about this for some time now because I haven't seen a lot of writing about it from veterans, but there's this notion of the military writing style,
Mm,
which, you know, when I was at West Point was kind of like beaten into your brain of the way you write your written communication is very concise, very deliberate. There's no fluff. There's no ambiguity. From a practical perspective, you need that on the battlefield. I mean, everyone needs to clearly, undoubtedly understand what the plan is of what they're doing. And I think that your ability to do that internally and eliminate the ambiguity, your team is going to appreciate that. Clients appreciate that. Your team's going to appreciate that. But I just see a lot of sellers. I see a lot of, and you see it in marketing, people's websites. There's a lot of kind of fluff sometimes. And it's like,
mm,
well, what do they actually do?
right,
And that's
right.
where I try to kind of communicate very clearly. You know, you think about the mission statement in the Army, it's 5 W's: who, what, why, when, where, I guess.
Mm,
So I try to, when I try to make a statement about anything, it's we are doing a task in order to achieve task and purpose. We are doing a task to achieve a purpose. So I try to communicate that, like I try to distill it as simply as I can when I communicate from a written perspective to my clients and I think internally to the team.
yeah, that's massive, man. Removing the ambiguity externally, internally, that's another area of breakdown in our process, and it impacts our results is when there's a misalignment of meaning, right? I don't know if you've read the book,
Yeah.
Crucial Conversations. That's one of the things that they talk about is a dialogue, whether it's written, verbal, whatever, it's an exchange of meaning between two people. And can
Yeah.
we align on the same meaning? That's where we got to start first. It's like when you say success or when you say growth or when you say improve, whatever it is, right? I need to understand what that means to you so I can align myself with that
Yeah.
and we're speaking the same language. If we don't do that, you're going to perpetuate, again, ambiguity, miscommunication throughout the process. And then you'll get all the way through the deal cycle and find out this isn't a fit. Well, if you would have aligned on
Yeah.
that stuff early, you would have known that months ahead of time and you wouldn't have wasted time and resources, with a lot of assumptions because you didn't get clarity on meaning.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about that with clients, right? I think sellers, especially when we talk to more technical clients, you don't want to sound stupid. Like, let's
Mhm.
just be honest. You want to sound like you understand everything that they're talking about, and I think that you have to overcome a fear of, asking somebody to expand on it. To your point, like, can you help me understand what you mean by that? Maybe we have two different interpretations of what that word means. You
Mhm.
have to have the same interpretation of a concept and of a word, and I think internally it's the same thing. Everyone needs to have the same understanding of what a term means. Going
Mhm.
back to the military, like if I'm writing like I said, a task and a purpose, if I say a task, you know, example, support by fire, everybody knows what that means. There is no room for ambiguity. Everybody is trained to understand what that term means.
Mhm.
And I do see a lot of friction and issues come up when folks use terms internally and externally, and they don't validate that the person actually understands and we're on the same page about what we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. Man, that is true leadership, man. You are the epitome of leadership, bro, on so many levels. And that's why I think we can just talk for hours and the things that you share just like really, really speak to me. And that's why I wanted you on the show, like one of my first guests, is because people need to hear this. You know what I mean? I think there's a lack of true leadership in the market. There's managers, right? There's team leaders, but there's
Yeah.
not leaders like you. Like the stuff you're talking about, man, it transcends any organization. Like you can go anywhere and you're gonna have success. Like you're already having success. Like we're not gonna get into that. There's some, but great things are happening for you, man. And I'm so
Yeah.
happy for you. I'm proud of you. And I just think we need to clone you somehow. We need more, we need more Rosses, man. I'm telling you. Yeah, you are a different breed, man, and I really appreciate it. One thing I see though when we talk about ambiguity, noise, detractors, I see, and I want to know what you think, but I see technology, some technologies, right? An overabundance of technologies in our tech stack. Love Chat GPT, love AI, large language models, all that stuff is great. But there are some tools out there right now. They're great tools, but I feel like they're misappropriated and it's creating busy work for our teams. It's not really
Yeah.
improving productivity. Do you see that in not necessarily at Tesla, but have you seen that over the years, over your sales career as we've introduced more sales tech?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it myself and I've also seen it, I don't, in my current capacity, I don't sell software, but I've sold enterprise software in the past and I've seen it how you sell the idea, implementation doesn't go well, everything
Mhm,
falls apart. And I think like the underlying problem there is you have to have a well-defined process that's enabled by technology.
mhm,
And I think often a lot of leaders will just let me purchase some technology because I think it'll help.
mhm,
And you don't really understand the underlying process that technology is intended to support. And I'm just a huge, caveat. I'm not great at using technology. So like people on my team would laugh because they joke with me all the time. I'm not an easy adopter of technology, but I tend to say like, let's define a process that can be done in Excel, Google, very manual basic terms first. And then once we determine that that process is effective, how do we enhance that process using technology?
mhm,
I think from a sales perspective specifically, I think the problem that I've seen is it's been hard to define that process because sales is changing so rapidly,
mhm,
especially in the last 3 years. Since I've been at Tesla, I've just seen this drastic shift through COVID to now of how we sell, how we get people's attention, you know, um, how buyers buy. we went through that phase of when I first got out of the army, we were still doing a lot of just smile and dial and cold calling.
Mhm,
People left the office, they're at home. That's not working. Now we're using all these tools to automate and personalize outreach at scale.
mhm.
Well, people start to realize that that's what you're doing. They realize like you didn't actually craft a personalized message. So now it's where's it going now? And I think it's hard to rapidly define a process when the situation's changing so much. And then if you can't define the process, you're setting yourself up for failure when you're trying to adopt technology.
1,000%.
It was a lot.
1,000%. Yeah. I'm actually literally working with a client right now, and we're taking the approach that you just mentioned. Let's build the process first, even though it's manual or whatever, but we have to build that first and then accelerate it with automation, with technology. Because if you don't, if you try to lead with the technology, you're basically going to accelerate a bad process. You're going to do wrong shit faster. And that is a
Yeah.
big, big problem, a big no no. And it costs the company tremendously in the short and long term, man. So I'm totally, totally in agreement with you.
When again, I think given our background, like there's a military flavor to our conversation today. And I always think about, when I was an artilleryman going through school,
Mhm.
you learn the digital and the analog way of doing things,
Yep.
right? So we would learn, we call it the charts and darts, and it was painful to learn how to do that. And that's how our artillery was done for decades. But you also learn the digital way. And I think a lot of us at the time were like, why do we have to learn how to do this manually? Like, this is so painful. We got a computer, but what happens when that goes out? That doesn't work. Bringing it back to business, you change vendors. You have to have the underlying process defined that
Yes.
needs to support that process. And that's just where I think a lot of organizations mess up, set themselves up for failure.
Yeah, 100%. The foundation is critical. Even I laugh like, I'm still pretty active and work out and things like that. And it's funny how even in that space, in the wellness space, you see people that want the quick fix. They want the fat burning
Yeah.
pill. They want this enhancement. They want this performance enhancing drug or whatever. It's like you haven't even seen how far your body can go on its own. You haven't even done the basics. You don't even have the muscle memory for the basics. And you want to add these other things. They're tools. They're all tools, right? But it's when and how. How are they appropriated that will get you the result that you're looking for. And you just
Yeah.
it's so funny, man. It's just human shit all across the board.
Well, this is an interesting concept too, this kind of notion of short-term gains versus long-term. And I think that this is like something that we all suffer with, given the world that we live in, the technology that we have. And I think going back to how sales is changing, I think at least for us, we're kind of leaning into, we kind of call it relationship pathways, not necessarily relationship selling, but I think old school leveraging relationships to get conversations started.
Mhm.
I think we've kind of seen that we haven't seen the ROI on the automated outreach with personalization, spraying and praying kind of thing. I think we're very much more targeted
Mhm.
in terms of who we want to go after. But I think to develop or to leverage relationships, you need to play the long game. You can't just reach out to somebody and make an ask and expect that they're going to help you the first time you talk to them. I think you have to just you know, commit to the process of this is going to be a generational thing. Like it's going to take years. I'm going to develop relationships with people, my network, so that I can leverage those relationships when the time comes. But I think to do that, you have to shift away from the short term mindset to long term, like relationships, account strategy. And I think that's a hard thing for I would definitely say younger sellers to do.
Mhm.
Um, I think, you know, more senior sellers saw that maybe more so
Mhm.
before we had all this technology. That's just my kind of feeling about that.
I think that is the key to success, man. I think that's one thing that this generation needs to refocus on is delivering human value, making human connections. I think you remember from when we met years ago, one thing I think I mentioned to you is like the best time to network is always now. Always,
Yeah.
always, always be expanding your network, but expand it for a purpose. Expand it to either learn or offer value. expand that network because until we get to the point where we're selling machine to machine, the human element is
Yeah,
always going to matter. And I think we've forgotten that. I think we've lost that with
100%.
all this technology hype.
100%, but also just having a genuine interest in building relationships for no other reason than that is critical.
Yeah.
I think people can smell when you're disingenuous real quick. You know,
Yeah.
I remember meeting you like in Atlanta for lunch one time. This was years ago, and it was totally random. And I say this, genuinely. I had no other reason to do that other than I really liked the conversations that we had. And I was like, I want to get to know Ryan better. Like he's somebody that I want as a part of my circle. And it was genuine. So I think you obviously have purpose in everything you do. You're deliberate, but you don't want to be overly deliberate, I guess, because I think people will sense that and they'll kind of know what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. 1000%, man. If you could give one piece of advice to a younger, well, just to a seller or even a sales leader, like a junior sales leader, because again, I consider you a senior leader, man. I really see you that way, a leader of leaders. If you could give them a piece of advice that will carry them through their career, no matter where they are, what would it be? Would it be the relationship piece of it, or would it be something different?
No, I think it's a relationship piece, but I think it's the bigger notion of playing the long game,
Mhm,
the infinite game. There's a book from Simon Sinek about this, but the playing the long game in everything that you do
mhm,
and understanding that it's about the habits that you build. It's really hard to just like, hey, here's a goal, I'm going to go achieve it.
mhm,
What's way more effective is identifying the habits that will get you to that goal and just developing those habits so that you're not thinking about it anymore. You're just doing the right things every day, and then good things will come. When I think of playing the long game from a sales perspective, relationships is a part of that. You want to build authentic relationships that over time, when the time is right, when it matters, take advantage of that. I mean, that could even be in a sales cycle. I think a lot of maybe younger sellers sometimes a deal doesn't go through. All right, that's it. I'm on to the next one. Well, who are the people that you were working with? Did you develop a good relationship? Well, maintain that relationship because guess what? They might come around at a different company 2 years from now, and then
yes,
could be a massive deal for you.
yes,
And that's not the only reason you maintain that relationship, but I think again the habits. Just do the right things and do it for the right reasons. But I also think the idea of long term, long range account planning is something that's very hard to do.
mhm,
This idea of I'm going to play chess over 2 or 3 years.
yeah,
Like I think really the elite sellers know how to do that. And I think sometimes most sellers don't. How do I develop this 3-year plan of getting into this account and growing this account and, every little step. Oh, I'm
mhm,
going to meet this person because I want to get this information. How do I have multiple conversations, gather all that information, synthesize that information, understand the situation to, adjust my plan accordingly. So I said a lot there, but I guess, what I'm getting at is just playing the long game in everything that you do. Don't look for the short term win.
yeah.
Commit to the long game habitually, relationship wise, account strategy wise. And I think that, you'll reap the benefits of that long term.
For sure. Oh my God, that hit me. Yeah, that's dude, I'm seeing some co-authoring in our future maybe, man. Like this has been so good. So good. And man, I appreciate you taking the time out on a Sunday. I know you've got a family. I know you've got many obligations. So I truly appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to leave with the audience? Anything that you want to know about you, about Tesla, about just any final wisdom that you wanna share? I didn't wanna cut you off if there's something else you wanted to provide or offer.
No, I mean, I would just say if anyone, and I'm always happy to talk to veterans that are transitioning. I think a lot of guys and gals, they don't typically look to sales. It's, you're seeing more of it, but I think it's not something that's kind of pushed on them from the start. And I think it's an amazing career. It's an amazing thing to do. So, I would say to any veterans that are transitioning, like reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk to you, but anybody, I'm happy to talk. I love to coach and mentor whenever I can. So that would, I guess, be my parting message.
Yes. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. And thank you all for listening. Thank everybody for tuning in and helping us take a step toward becoming the number one revenue enablement podcast in the world. Truly believe that's possible. We are committed to simplifying and accelerating the pace of the complex sales process. So please take a moment to like and subscribe so that you can receive alerts on future episodes. Also, follow us on other platforms. Just look for Sales Leverage or salesleverage.ai and follow us there for transformative insights and tactics that will give you the leverage to win more deals and maximize your revenue while doing it. Take care, everybody. Thanks again, Ross. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan.